Silence stops feeling like emptiness and starts feeling like something else entirely, something heavier, something that breathes. It usually comes late at night, when the notifications have finally gone quiet, when the last conversation has faded, and it's just you and the ceiling and the sound of your own thoughts moving through the dark, like water finding its level. Most people panic in that moment. Most people reach for their phone. Most people will do almost anything to fill that silence before it fills them. But what if that instinct, that desperate, almost primal need to escape the company of yourself, is the very thing that has been quietly stealing your power for years? We are living in 2026, and the noise has never been louder. Not the noise of traffic or machines, but the noise of constant connection, constant performance, constant signal. Every moment of stillness is now treated as a problem to be solved, a gap to be filled, a silence to be corrected. Scroll, stream, text, react. The architecture of the modern world has been deliberately constructed to make being alone feel like a punishment, to make solitude feel like failure. And the most dangerous part? We've started to believe it. We've started to confuse isolation with loneliness, stillness with stagnation, and silence with emptiness, when the truth, the ancient, terrifying, liberating truth, is that the most powerful men and women who ever walked this earth spent extraordinary amounts of time completely and utterly alone. This is the Eagle Rule. And before I explain what it is, I need you to understand what it costs you not to know it. Think about the eagle for a moment, not as a symbol, not as a logo on a flag, but as a living creature making real choices in a real world. The eagle does not flock, while sparrows move in nervous, chattering clouds, while pigeons cluster on every available surface. The eagle ascends alone. It rides thermal currents that other birds cannot reach, that other birds don't even know exist, because those other birds are too busy staying together, staying low, staying safe. The eagle's power is not despite its solitude. The eagle's power is because of it. It sees from heights that communal creatures will never access. It strikes with precision that crowds will never achieve. And the most fascinating thing, the thing that dark psychology understands deeply, is that the eagle is not lonely. The eagle is sovereign. Now bring that back to your life. Bring it back to the person sitting wherever you are right now, watching this video, probably with some part of your mind already drifting toward the next thing, the next stimulus, the next reason to not sit with yourself in quiet. When did you last spend a full hour in complete solitude? No music, no podcast, no background television, no phone, just you and your own mind, moving through space together. If the answer is a long time, or you're not sure, or never, then what I'm about to tell you isn't just interesting, it's urgent. There is a principle buried in dark psychology, and when I say dark, I don't mean evil, I mean the psychology that operates beneath the surface, the psychology that most people never examine because it's uncomfortable. And that principle is this: the person who cannot be alone cannot be trusted with power. Not because they're weak in the conventional sense, but because a person who cannot sit with themselves is a person who is perpetually running from their own thoughts. And a person running from their own thoughts will always be manipulated by someone willing to offer them a direction to run toward. This is why the most sophisticated forms of social control don't look like cages. They look like entertainment. They look like community. They look like belonging. They give you constant noise, so you never have to hear the voice inside you that says, "Wait, something is wrong. Think harder. Look again." The person who has learned to be alone, truly alone, not just physically isolated, but mentally sovereign, that person cannot be so easily led. That person has developed something that the modern world is quietly, systematically trying to eliminate: an inner life. A rich, complex, self-referencing interior world that does not require external validation to function. And that inner life is the source of every great idea, every genuine revolution, every artwork that ever made someone cry in recognition, every business that changed an industry, every moment of human courage that the history books remember. It all came from someone who was willing to be alone long enough to hear something true. I want to tell you about a man named Viktor Frankl. You may know his name, a psychiatrist, a survivor of the Nazi concentration camps, including Auschwitz, a man who lost nearly everything: his family, his manuscript, his freedom, his physical safety. And yet, in the most brutal conditions that modern history has recorded, Viktor Frankl discovered something extraordinary. He discovered that the last human freedom, the freedom that no external force could ever take, was the freedom to choose his own response to his circumstances, to choose his own meaning. And he made that discovery not in conversation, not in community, not in the comfort of belonging. He made it in the deepest possible solitude, surrounded by horror, forced inward because there was nowhere else left to go. What he found in that interior space became a book that has since changed millions of lives. What he found in the silence that was forced upon him was the most powerful version of himself that had ever existed. Now, I am not saying you need suffering to find your power. I am saying that Viktor Frankl's story is a map to what's possible when you stop treating your inner world like a waiting room and start treating it like a destination. I am saying that the things most worth finding about yourself will never be found in a crowded room. They live in the quiet. They live in the alone. But here's where the psychology gets darker and more honest and more important. Because the reason most people avoid solitude is not simply that it's uncomfortable. The real reason is that solitude is revealing. When you are alone, genuinely alone, without the props and the performances, you are confronted with the exact shape of your own mind. You see what you actually believe, stripped of what you've been saying you believe. You feel what you actually feel, without the social translation that makes those feelings presentable. You see the gap between the life you're performing and the life you're actually living, and that gap can be agonizing. So people run, people fill every second, people surround themselves with enough noise and relationship and obligation that the mirror never gets a chance to reflect clearly. And they call this a full life. And the world tells them they're right to call it that. But somewhere underneath all of it, in the small, quiet hours when the armor comes down and sleep hasn't arrived yet, they know. They feel the hollow place where their real self should be. They feel the exhaustion of being a character in their own story rather than the author of it. The Eagle Rule says, you must climb above the flock before you can see clearly. And climbing above the flock, in the language of real human life, means choosing solitude when the world around you is offering distraction. It means building a practice, not a personality trait, not a gift you either have or you don't, but a deliberate daily practice of returning to yourself, of sitting in the quiet long enough that the quiet starts to speak. And what it says, when you finally stop running long enough to hear it, will be the most important thing you've ever listened to.